Hi, I'm Holly, I'm a writer, and today I'm gonna be going over my draft 2 and writing and also kind of talking about how I do that. So the last episode, I'm gonna just kind of get right into it. The last one I spoke about how I print out a physical copy of my draft and then I make notes on it, and that's where we're at. This is chapter 3, which is, so far it's my least favorite chapter. It's the one that, in my opinion, it needed quite a lot of work, even though it was at the right word count. So I have, I think, 3 pages left. Oh, so I have more than 3. I have quite a few more, a little bit more than 3 pages left. Okay, so this is it. These aren't numbered, which is whatever, but I have quite a bit to do. I've already written 7 pages, so the draft is definitely going to be a bit beefier, which is fine. I've added a lot already to the first and second chapters, which were half the size of the chapters that I usually do, so I added a lot to those, and I just generally gave them a little bit of a revamp. So basically what I do, I put this literally on my left. I don't know why on my left. I guess because I'm right-handed, so my mouse goes on the right. But I put the physical draft next to me. Now this has little notes. Some of these notes are a little I've mentioned this, some of them are little things just to sort of get my own attention on them. Some of them are a little bit more detailed. I changed something, yeah, this last page had quite a lot of notes. I had some different things that I wanted to do with this. So I've kind of changed a lot the way that this third chapter is. First of all, I changed the lyrics. So the last writing session that I had where I did this, I changed the lyrics of the song, and that took me 20 minutes because I was just I don't like this song, something's off about it. So I completely changed the first bit, I changed a bit of the chorus, and I feel it's better. And I added more detail to the show that she's in, but I added in more detail in the sense that she's on stage, but I wanted it to be you can sense that she's still thinking about the stuff that's happened in the first 2 chapters. She's maybe starting to show the signs that she's not necessarily the most reliable person to be narrating this story, that there's all these little things, so there's little clues almost. So there's this chapter which happens in here on literally page 2, which here doesn't happen on page 2. It's really weird because for some reason there's a big gap in the page, just because of the way that the writing for some reason has decided to skip ahead, which is whatever. But essentially this page, I decided to sort of show that there's this, so it starts with a line about it's funny how pervasive an unhappy thought can be, and so then it goes into this show that she's at, and then after explaining all of this sort of stuff in detail and being wow, this is so cool, it's but she isn't thinking about that because she has a thought. And then she sings the song, and the songs in this are pretty relevant. I think I've mentioned that before. The songs that I wrote, some of them are just more songs that she sings. It's not supposed to be every single song is a, but this one is the one that the name of the book comes from, because the name of the song is Buried Under My Rose Garden, and the name of the book is Buried Under My Rose Garden. And so the song is it's about basically yeah, you've got your rose glasses on pretty tight, and it shows there's sort of the idea that maybe she's a bit jealous, that she gets a little bit like angry and she doesn't really know how to sort of deal with like the conflict that she creates really well. You make a bad joke, call me your wife, I tell you that I love you. And the cycle restarts is what it is currently. I've been thinking about that. I think I'm going to change it to something different. But essentially the idea that like she's one of those women who's a little bit toxic in a relationship, but like very like self-conscious about it, like admitting that that's the case, you know, kind of like, yeah, I get it, but like but like in a fun way. So it kind of goes through it, and then while she's singing this song that's about her flaws, she has this sort of feeling where she talks in sort of reference about how she had written this song and it had been, you know, sort of in a way almost like a contrast with the nights that she has spent thinking about this guy who's gone missing and how maybe she could go missing next, you know, like a lot of thoughts about that. I'm adding a lot more stuff like that in to make it more ambiguous, because I think that the way that she feels about him, that was one of the things that some like my betas, because I had beta readers, again, you should always get them because this is the stuff that they pick up on, because you know kind of how somebody feels about somebody in your book because you wrote them. They might not, because maybe you haven't written it in a way that's very clear. So one of the questions was, how does she feel about Dylan? Like, does she wish that he hadn't gone missing? Does she wish that he had? Like, what, like, why is he, like, in this stage of the book where everything's still very new, more clarification on that without actually, like, you know, necessarily, like, being super expository. So, for example, I decided to add in a few more lines about him to show the complexity of her relationship with the place where he went missing, which is where she lived. That's not a spoiler, you find that out really quickly. But also, again, this is chapter 3, but like also the idea that you know, maybe she didn't love this person, maybe she thought that he seemed like not that great of a guy, but this line, had he deserved what happened to him? If so, did she deserve any better? And she's saying this as she's singing a song about her flaws, right? So it's, again, stuff like that where it wasn't like that in this original bit. It was just a little bit more like throwing stuff at a wall, which again, this is what a draft is for, but I guess that's like what this is about. And then she sings a different song and she goes into this sort of memory of how this song was actually one that he had heard her sing, right? And I changed this quite a bit, just to like clean up the writing a little bit of like foreshadowing stuff, I guess. And yeah, it had only started to make sense when another glaring example of such a balance had fallen in her path, unavoidable and torturous. The missing man had watched her perform in his last hours, his time not yet come, fate already having lined up the dominoes. He had cheered for her and complimented her skill. Even the song, the version of it that was terrible, she had felt seen by him when he told her that she had a heartfelt touch to her music. Sharing a moment like that with somebody touches you in a way that can't be washed away. When that connection is severed by the set person you share it with being lost from the world, it is felt deep. Stranger or not, he'd been nice to her. And then she goes to talking about like how herself, those weeks had grown her, matured her. Weeks of dimpled smiles and missing posters. Her stems had hardened and grown thorns. The beauty of her face and her voice becoming nothing more than another contrast that she could see but not express. So essentially the idea that I had in this draft and that I wasn't super thrilled with, like I left quite detailed notes on this page to be like expand essentially. Like one of my notes is literally, when you have a moment shared with somebody and the world then loses them forever, you feel it more than you would think. So I obviously haven't put it in exactly like that, but I've put that sort of thought in because again, that is like, it's adding stuff to it, you know, it is like a developmental stuff, it's adding to the sort of plot by making this chapter feel more like the vibe that I was intending for it to have. This idea of like the balance of like the life that she has now with the one that she had at the time, the way that he has impacted that and the way that she feels about that. And again, clarifying for the readers that, you know, it's not that she like hates him or anything, you know, she maybe sometimes is a bit harsh about it, but maybe that's because of the way that she has sort of been impacted by him going missing in this place where she was around. And like, you know, there's a lot of mentions as well that I've added about like the fact that she's a bit afraid that people are going to think that she's like a fake when they find out that she hasn't always dressed the way that she did, that this sort of came later, that this was like a decision that she made for her image as a pop star. If this is your first video that you're watching, it's a book about a pop star who lives in a place before she gets famous. Person goes missing there, and it's like a really big significant moment in her life, and then later on his case gets brought back into public attention, and she's at like the height of her fame and everything's like going super well, but it kind of takes her back and she's sort of stuck in this never able to fully move forward stage, and it causes like a breakdown of fairly large proportions, but very slowly and steadily, and like the whole book is about the progress through this breakdown. And so yeah, and then I also added a line about how, you know, in order to see the beauty that she is putting on the show, like the visuals and stuff, the people in the crowd, some of them are crying and they look really like ugly because of it, which again, I wanted to make her like meaner in this chapter, in all of the chapters, but especially in this one. I feel like one of the beta comments that I got was that at times it felt like she really cared about her audience, but then she would say things that would suggest that she thought that she was like more than them. And I think that that's like what I want. Like I was a bit afraid to make her too mean, but I had comments being like, up the mean. So I'm doing that. And that's like one of the bigger things. And then just stuff like this where it's like, this reads a bit vague. That's like a thing that I've got. Yeah. But this chapter, the reason why it's so important as well is because after the show, she gets spoken to by somebody else about this missing persons case that is being, you know, thingied. And they talk specifically about the idea that like he's been missing for 8 years, so like when he comes back, if they find him, it's gonna be really like weird, right? Because he's not going to have lived this life. And so essentially going with this sort of idea of let's add more info into this, but not in like the sense that you're dumping it, right? You're not info dumping. You're adding information through lines that show the character's feelings. You're adding lines that show the sort of complex nature of the relationships they have with each other. And because the rest of this chapter, I think I may end up doing like a little bit of editing, because it's, I say a little bit of editing, obviously that's like the point, but you know. This chapter was the one where she goes on a bus now? It should be, right? This is their own. Yeah. So basically they're in the middle of nowhere and she has this urge to buy a cigarette. And her relationship with her mother is something that's getting a lot of like work. Specifically, her relationship with her father is a little different, but her relationship with her mother is a really big one. She actually has a song that wasn't mentioned. I realized that it wasn't mentioned in the original, like, in the original draft at all, even though it's pretty big character information, because basically she has a teacher who she sees as like her mother figure, and so she writes a song called Mama, but it's about that music teacher and about herself a little bit, and how she's kind of like, because her relationship with her mother is really complex. So I wanted to have more about that, and I wanted to make it a little bit more like, as I said, complex, rather than just, you know, like the first draft sort of, this is the idea, do you get the idea, do you get it, do you get it, because it is very obvious. But then I also, she has this urge, yeah, inside the store is the behind the counter cigarette store. Twitchy fingers lean towards it while she walks by. that like throwaway line, I want to turn that into something by having her perhaps relapse into a nicotine addiction when her mental state deteriorates, because there's a lot of little things that I wanted to pick up on. So basically it's stuff like that I'm doing, right? Is I'm adding like stuff in where it sort of matters, changing like little like character elements. One thing I also wanted to do is I wanted to have her, I created a character and then I didn't have him show up at all. So I want to swap out one character for a different one. And I just needed to check his name because he was so not in there that like I literally couldn't tell you his name for the life of me. But basically, that's where we're at. Is I'm on page 50 of the document. It's basically 49 pages of text. Mine is actually 1 page because of the Act 1 with the song list. And then yeah, so there's this show and it's this sort of contrast between the way that she's thinking and the way that she's presenting herself on the stage, and how she's very introspective but it's not interfering with her performance. And you can see that she has a little bit of disgust towards some of her fans, but also she still really respects the sort of power that she has. And then I left it where she's starting to sing this other song, and I left a little mark for myself on where to get into it. So basically, advice, because I'm gonna go into this now basically and actually just write for the day. Just get a few words done. If I can just get like 100 or so words, I'll be happy, because I haven't written in a little bit, and it always makes me feel a bit sad. Like, I've had reasons, but still. And so what I want to do is I want to focus, as I said, on adding stuff in. Okay, I'm at 15,000 words almost, right? Not quite. If it's about 5,000 words a chapter, that's about 75,000 words. By the end of the chapter, I think it's hard for me to tell actually, because I think I only had 14 plus a prologue. The prologue's not that long, so it's actually only gonna be quick maths, as they say. So we're gonna do, we'll do 5 by 14 and then we'll imagine that it's like, right, so it's really not that much at all. So we can go over, we should be going over, we're already like, we have more, I think one of them was like 6,000 words. So it's a 70,000 sort of word base, but we're adding to what we already have, and we already have 5,000+ words per chapter. So the last chapter I want to do a bit more development on. There's another chapter that again I want more development, and I want to sort of clarify some things. So I'm kind of going through and I'm thinking like, where can I add important things for the character development? Where can I like add sort of paragraphs, sort of sentences that clarify the way that she's thinking, the way that she's feeling, but without it being like super heavy? Where can I take what's already there and make it feel more natural, but also make it better? Like, better in the sense that like it conveys even more of the image that I want it to have. So it's like this song, for example, I want it to be there because again it shows that some of her music is very playful, it's very sort of sexy, and that contrast is like very important because it's explained that she actually can't really have sex. Like, she hasn't really been able to enjoy sex in a long while. It kind of makes her feel a little bit ill. So she basically, in this sort of scene, she is getting her audience to sort of participate, and then she sings this song, and it's supposed to be like a playful, sexy song. And yeah, she's like very much in it. And then when you get later into the story and you realize that she can't really, like, the idea of her having these relationships and writing her songs about them it's almost, again, it's part of her performance, as a part of her sort of persona rather than like actual life experience, because she doesn't necessarily feel that way about these things. And I think that it's really important to put a little bit more emphasis on that element, which I didn't. Like, I didn't put any real, like, I kind of did, but I want to go a little bit more. And there's also a relationship that I wanted to develop a lot more because it's there, but I realized that I can really use it as a way of showing exactly how far she's fallen later on. So thinking of like all of these like little things, the beta reader feedback that I've gotten, and then going through literally and just rewriting the chapter, but like different, right? Like, I'm not rewriting it exactly and just kind of rewording things. I'm rewriting it in the sense that I'm doing the edits as I go into a clean page, because that's what I prefer. If you prefer to do it into like the same document, that's fine. But I think that that's like ultimately what you're supposed to be doing for a second draft, is you're supposed to be focusing on like big sort of changes in the timeline, big changes in characters, and really focusing on getting like these things where you want them, so that when you want to line edit, you are able to really crisp it up and you don't have to worry about like, am I editing this chapter and then it's not going to matter because this chapter is going to get cut later on, because you're doing that now. And I've kind of spoken about that already, but I just think that you know, reading my notes, and sort of especially since it's been a while since I started making these notes, it really becomes more obvious, I think, that, you know, there's stuff that I want to make better. The last chapter that I edited, actually, because I'm still editing as I go, because I realized that I didn't want, like, I wanted to get started writing and I already knew the majority of my notes. So this is like the stuff that I've already edited, right? It's out the way. This is the stuff that I have to edit, that I've made my edits on paper. But then I have, from chapter 7 onwards, I have what I need to do. And the first half of the book, I've said this before, again, if you've not seen it, that's fine. That was like the big one that needed like the majority of changes, because I really figured out what I was doing when I got to like the middle mark, which was where I had like the big sort of moment, and then from there everything becomes a little easier. And then chapter 7, like, this is a really significant chapter, and I have some edits that I know I want to make based off of beta feedback, and I've got notes that I made literally like in a notes app document for that. The last chapter in this, chapter 6, to sort of build up to what happens in chapter 7, I wanted to really like, I want to like focus a little bit, you see, on the idea that there's, because, okay, so chapter 6, I'm trying to figure out how much I can say about this. In chapter 6, she goes to therapy, right? Chapter 6, she's doing bad enough mentally that people have noticed, which I need to add more references to the fact that people have noticed, so that that feels a little bit less like out of nowhere. That's one of my notes. But also, I want to edit the therapy session. I want it to feel longer. I want the audience reading this sentence like to feel exactly how difficult and long this session feels, because she doesn't feel like she can talk about what's wrong with her, right? Like, she doesn't feel like she can be open. And there's a lot of like stuff in there that is good, but I think that I can make it more almost like intense, you know, less like a little bit awkward, like a little bit like, oh my god, and a little bit more like, what if this is actually like it for me? What if this is me being done, right? Because that's kind of how she feels, and I feel like it didn't come across. And so I think I could add it and make it a little bit longer and really pick up on it, really sort of give like the sort of the sense of like, if it was a film, you would imagine that it would be like the clock would be super loud, and it would be like you would hear like the drips from the water thing outside, right? Like, you've got like all of these sorts of like little things that you can do in a book that I haven't done because I was just trying to figure out where this was going. So it's stuff like that, right? Like the big stuff where you can really make these scenes, you know, you've got the idea, now you sort of shape it into being a little bit better, right? You've cut your sort of stone into the vague shape of the statue, now you start chiseling in the details. And it's not like you're doing the super tiny stuff, but you are really making it more obvious that like this is the vision that you had, and it's getting to be like that now. It's starting to really have like the interiority of characters who you know who they are because you finished the first draft, so you've had like a whole book with them now, and now you can make all of their sentences read like they're the one saying them. You can make it so that those little things that felt like they maybe didn't have a purpose, you give them the purpose that you intended them to have, or you cut them out, or you change them to something else. That's essentially what I'm doing. This sort of chapter is one of the ones where I need to sort of warp it a little bit because the purpose kind of got lost in translation. But I think I'm adding it back in, and I think that I'm weaving the things through it rather than it just being like something unconnected stuff back to the thing, more unconnected stuff. It's like stuff with like oh, maybe she's thinking of this thing comes into focus, it blends in with this thing, she goes back into this, because she's in and out, right? Like it's her future, her present and her past sort of coalescing, and that's like the vibe. And I think that with like other stories as well, the plot threads are going to be a little bit bigger, maybe you've got like side plots. In this one it's mostly just like the sense that she's going insane, but again I can sort of fix this up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just sit and do some writing, and then I'll come back and sort of let you know how that went. And I think that will be kind of it. I don't really, because I can't show you like I can't really show you what I'm writing, but this will be like the editing video for draft 2, and then I'll do another video eventually about like the sort of line edits, copy edits, sort of the things that you do before you send it to an agent. I'll do like a one writing a synopsis because I still have to do that when I finished the draft and actually know everything that happens and what is significant in this newer version. And then going back over the query letter, making sure that nothing is like unsaid, and essentially just getting this book ready to send out to agents, which I feel like really good about it. And I will say I want to read it, but I keep putting off reading it because it's not like finished, and so I get like annoyed because I get to the end and I'm like, I want to keep reading. So that's a good sign with a book. If you really like reading your own book, obviously that doesn't mean that everybody's gonna love it as well, but at the very least, if you like it, it means that you're probably going to be okay getting this thing published, because it takes a long time and a lot of rereading and a lot of thinking about it. And then if you get like interviews and stuff, a lot of talking about it. So that is kind of where I'm at. And I just, I'm going to go get started and try and aim for at least a few words. If I can just get like a single page done, you know, I think that I want to try and speed it up a little bit so that I can be done hopefully by like June time, or like at the very least sort of mid-June, because I have a friend who beta read for me and she was so great, and she's also looking into like, you know, getting better at editing like in a professional way, because she's really cool and she's like gonna be an agent and it's great. But she's offered to like do like it properly with me, and I'm like, absolutely, I would love that, because she was like, I would love to read it again, and I'm like, so I'm gonna go write and then I'll pop back and that'll be it. And then the next video, by the way, if you aren't a big writer fan but you watch my videos anyway, thank you for that. I have a bunch of books and I'm gonna go on a little like book haul type video. I didn't buy a lot of them, but also a lot of them I did buy, and so I just want to like talk about these books that I got, because some of them especially I feel like they're kind of interesting in context of my writing stuff. Let's just say I have plans, okay? We're gonna go, and then I'll be back and you'll see probably like a little montage of me writing, so. I did that, and I ended up doing about 1700 words, which isn't as much as I would usually aim to do. However, I got myself I did, oh, okay, that's not good. I did, like, okay, so this is where I'm at, right, obviously, but I got from where I was, I did the, like, half or so of the page that I had, like, already started, full page, more, and then a little bit of this next page. And one of my notes on this was that I wanted to change this a lot, so we've done that. And I'm just leaving a note for myself, a little line to say, like, this is where to go from next. So that's done. And I think it was, I didn't love it, I'm gonna be honest. This chapter, I've left a note in my diary, because if you don't know, again, you might not have seen all the videos, I've got a little diary that I write in every single day. And so I put like a little line or two or whatever about how it goes. So for this one, I've made a note for my future self that chapter 3 is a little like I think that it serves the purpose, but I don't know if the execution is quite right yet. So this might need a little bit more work. Specifically like this, rather than like doing a second developmental edit, I mentioned that my friend is going to help me, and I'm also going to give it to a different friend to beta read when I've done the second draft, because she didn't really have time to read it, and then I was like, well, I've started to edit, so you might as well read like the second draft, because that will be more helpful for me, and it would be in a better shape, but also you would be able to give like feedback that would be helpful. So I've left it there. I've still got a few pages left, but it's like specifically the bit of the chapter that I know how I want to edit it, whereas this bit was like the bit where like literally towards the end I started to feel like it made sense again, but then that specific bit at the start, it was giving me a little bit of trouble, so it was taking me a little bit longer. And then that's kind of the way that I think that it works, right? Like you are editing it, but there are going to be some things where you just don't feel like you understand what to fix yet, and you just sort of really work on them and you keep going, and then eventually it evens out again. I think that I definitely have got it better, but there is like just a little bit that I think I want to remove, maybe. But I'm gonna leave that for like future version of me when I've got some eyes on it to see if they have any suggestions for it, because I think that while it's a weaker chapter, I think that it still has some stuff that's very valuable. And I added a little bit more to, like, one of the conversations feels really off, but I think I managed to do a little bit of shuffling around, and then basically that's like it. I just left it. I did like a page and a half, which was 1700 words, so I'm gonna have to not, because that chapter is gonna be really long, I need to like not add super duper amounts of text, but like, yeah, I don't know. I think that with this, I think that what you really need to do, and I say you, obviously, what you really need to do with, when it comes to, you know, having like your edits, you need to think about it as like a process. Like, yeah, okay, so it's not in the best shape that it could be. It's not like I've just finished it and all of a sudden the book is perfect. That's normal. Yes, with the other two chapters, I felt a lot better about it. But this one is like a problem chapter, and I knew that going in. I think that you just got to take it when it goes slow and then when it goes quick. And while there is a lot left to this chapter, I think that I want to focus it more on some of the stuff that doesn't really happen until a little bit later in the chapter. and kind of cut back now because of the added stuff that I've done in the first half, which is like, there's like a page break is where I've left it. So I think that that's like a structural thing, right? Is that I'm, instead of doing it all in this bit, I'm adding it up in this bit and then having a little bit here, but having this mostly be like a continuation of what we're calling, based off of what other people have sort of commented, normal Maddie. So we're having a little bit more normal stuff as well. So I've even done that, like I've, rather than escalating it, not escalating, I've had like a thing where she has a little bit of like a, but rather than it being like a big thing where she's like on the floor not being able to breathe, it's more like she's having a normal human reaction to what she's thinking, and then she moves on, you know, like she's having a bit of like a tense moment and then she moves on and that's it, and it's not like a big deal. And I think that that has been written better. It's hard because again, this new draft, I don't have the full picture yet. I mentioned this in the other one, you don't want to make your edits until, you know, you've got like the full picture to work with. It really, like, that's what this is it's big picture edits. You're editing the things that are super big so that by the time that you finish with these, you're able to edit then the lines and it not be like messing up, like you're not going to write a line that's brilliant and then it's not relevant to the plot because that section gets cut. So, you know, I can't look at the big picture, I can't make decisions on this draft yet, you know, like it feels kind of rough, but I don't know if it's actually rough. I don't have enough distance to decide if it's rough yet. I don't know if it is going to serve the purpose I intend for it to serve in the greater plot because I've not written the rest of the book yet. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm just going to be reading, you know, the rest of my stuff, making more notes on the second half, trying to figure out the little bits with that half. Specifically the next chapter that I have to edit is like a big one. But then also the process of just getting that written up, you know, as long as for every one chapter that I write there, I edit a chapter there, it's going to be fine. And I'm going to try and speed up a little bit and to focus a little bit less on being like perfect, because like with that chapter and that specific bit of the chapter, it was rough. But for the next few chapters, I think I had a clear vision of what I wanted for them. So I'm hoping that that will be a little bit easier. And with this one, I'm now in a place where I can focus on the family relationship stuff, which deserves a little bit more development. It's already been kind of developed a little bit, but I'm going to do a little bit more. And then that will play into what happens later. And it's really important that this happens like now, because by chapter, what is overall chapter 8, but it's chapter 1 of part 2, we need the family dynamic to be settled and like sort of, you know, like it needs to be really solid, so that there's a question that one of my betas brought up, which is a completely valid question, and it's like, you know, a character motivation situation. Sorry. That's okay, but it's one of the things where, you know, it just is like, okay, so if I don't know the character as well as you do, I can kind of get it, but I don't. So we need to have this relationship with her parents be developed a little bit more, so that in the moment, the little notes that I've got written to help me figure that out, I have on my notes app, I have one thing which has it's literally screenshots of the like beta document feedback that I got. And I like wrote on my phone in like pen on my phone on the camera like app, like this like sort of solution to this, and then I also wrote to a different thing that I screenshotted. I wrote like a little scene that I had like this idea, and I was like, that would actually add to that, and it would kind of create the same feeling that I intended for that scene to have, like, initially. Essentially what I want from this book is for it to feel very isolating. I want it to feel like you watch this character who is already a little closed off to like other people. Like, she doesn't really have that much respect for her fans, even though they're her fans, and she loves being famous, and in theory she loves them. You know, she has these people in her life that she's really close to, but also she never really tells them the truth, and she's always kind of playing a character even with these people that she really cares about. And she has these opportunities to just embrace it, you know, and to be like the person that she wants to be, this version of herself that she pretends to be. She has the opportunity to do that, but she never gives it to herself, you know? She never actually takes it. And so she isolates herself, and you feel that, and it's this cage that she herself has built, but she can't get out of it because she like has made it, you know, it's not a cage that's very flimsy that she's built and that it's like, oh, she could just step through the bars and it would be fine. And so far that feels like what it is, right? Because the first draft, it does feel like a very loose weave of the cage. And so she, you know, is kind of trapped, but she's not. And so that's where the character motivation stuff comes in. That's where like clearing it up, because it becomes clear then that she has trapped herself. You know, she's played herself so hard, trying to play other people, trying to be this version of herself that she prefers to who she really is, but she's never connected these two versions of herself. And so she loses the ability to connect with this other version fully. And she also cannot bear this other version of herself. And so she's suspended between the two, and she can't go to either one because neither is a good solution. And she has no people to talk to about it, and she doesn't know how to talk about it. She doesn't know how to deal with it. And so she's got this like whole situation that's just of her own doing, but it's like watertight basically. And that's what I am trying to do in this draft, is to make it watertight. And it's really difficult to talk about this because if like the book was out, I could like go through it in detail with you and it wouldn't be like a spoiler because you could have bought the book, right? But in the way that it is right now, I obviously can't spoil it. And so it's really difficult for me to like talk about specifics, because like I can talk about the fact that there's like tension with her family relationships, but the very specifics of that, you know, it's like I don't want to talk about it too much because it has a really big role in the story and in the way that the story sort of ends, the way that it is resolved, because her family dynamic, you know, I have always like sort of, okay, let me put it this way. So there are stories where the family, like the parents of the person, they're not involved in their life at all. They basically don't exist. And people, that's a criticism, right? And it should be, especially if you're writing like a young person. In my case, I don't like doing that. I like to have the family of my characters, if they're the kind of people who would have their family around, or where it would be natural for their family to be mentioned. You know, like for example, if they're going through a rough time, obviously their family's going to want to be there for them, or at the very least you would have to mention why they're not wanting to be there for them. Rather than just write it off and be like, this person's family like them or this person's family don't. I try and include the family. I did that with Formation Lab. Her parents are there a lot, and they make it very clear that like, you know, she sees this relationship with her career that she has as being like, I have to be good at this, I have to do really well, I have to be better. Her family, I don't know how that noise got made if you heard that, but her parents, like, they don't, it's not like they are like blindly supporting her, but they kind of put it into perspective, right? Like there are moments where she is like so worked up by the fact that like this is her career and she wants it so badly, and then they come in and they're just like really proud of their daughter and they just love their child and they want her to be okay. And I think that that really puts, there is a scene in that book where it's really put into perspective that she isn't doing so great mentally, and that like her perspective is off. It's just off. And in this, it's kind of the same, but like almost the opposite, where the family dynamic, it's not the healthiest, but also it's not like she hates her parents. It's not like her parents aren't in the picture. You know, they're in the picture, and their relationship, it is complex and there's layers to it. And from the parent side, you get a little bit of an explanation of maybe why the relationship is the way that it is. There's, for example, it's mentioned, this isn't a spoiler, she went to boarding school, right? She went to boarding school. She was like a rich kid who went to a boarding school, very big one, very famous, like prestigious one of the best in the world. And when you think about that, like if you were going to a school on the opposite side of the world to your family, it might make sense if your relationship with them was a little strained, because maybe, you know, maybe they don't feel like they ever connected with you. And it's explained that more than just being a choice, it's like a family tradition. So you get like some looks into, and especially like in this draft, it wasn't really in the first one, but I want to really explore the mother more and have her relationship with her mother be a little bit more than it was. And I just think that for me is so much more fulfilling, because it really gives like these characters something to, you know, feel real about. Like, you know, you have a family, no matter who you are. You either have a family that chose not to have you as part of their family, or you have a family that did. And, you know, whatever those families look like between those two things, however loving or cold or whatever, your family said you, like, your circumstances in life are determined by the way that you are raised. And if you are raised by your family, or if you're raised by people that are like strangers to you and who don't see you as like a family member, that all is going to have an impact. And so wherever a character comes from, and so like that is important, and that's something that I work on in these drafts, in this next draft, is, you know, I've got the ideas of what these relationships are like, let's get them better developed. So that's kind of it. I could talk in circles around this, but that's kind of like a general, less spoilery way of talking about it. And I do feel like the progress that's being made it's going in the right direction. So yes. Next video is going to be me talking about some books, very casual. And it's probably going to be another while until, because I think I'm going to only talk when I finish this draft, and then thinking about what edits I'm going to make for the next draft and talking about that process. But I'm going to have to read the book first, which I'm excited to do, but like, but that's what we're going to do. But yeah, I feel like I've grown as a writer from this process of this book specifically. I feel like this has challenged me in a new way that I really needed to be challenged, to see myself as a writer who was capable of writing more serious fiction. I don't know. Yeah. I think that I've managed to get a bit more of a balance in this second draft, and even just today, of handling these like sort of topics and doing it in a way that isn't just I'm handling them, but is like I'm kind of the boss of them, actually. So that's what we're gonna do, and I will see you soon, maybe next week, hopefully next week. I'm trying to be good with this, but yeah, I have like 21 days of the month, so we'll see if I can do it, because I have thought about it. If I took 2 days per chapter, that's 14 days, so in theory I could do it. I just need to get a little faster, which I think I will when I get to the chapters that have a little bit less notes on them, because they're in much better shape. And I need to also do a document with all of my beta feedback in one, because I've currently got 2 different places and it's really difficult to get to them both at the same time, and I want to organize them, but I have been checking them, and yeah. So thank you for watching. Bye.